Hello again, and welcome to another version of Unlock Your Business Potential. And this is going to be our fireside chat. I'm Austin Smith. I'm a local business broker, and we welcome Dr. Ann Wynn to the fireside chat. And Dr. Wynn is a franchise business broker. So, Dr. Ann, would you just maybe, before we start the chat, why don't you tell us a little bit about what a franchise business broker does?
Sure. Thank you so much. Yes, a franchise business broker is an individual who's going to help you. So I help people who are in a corporate world who wants to transition to business ownership, and or individuals are brand business owners that want to brand stack. What I mean by that is I help individuals to get into franchise business with a proven model and going through a deep dive into due diligence process. So we'll find you an ideal franchise that fit your budget, your criteria, and your lifestyle.
Thank you very much. So even though we have both have business broker in our title, where I think we probably more complement one another as opposed to compete with one another. Whereas Dr. Ann is helping potential entrepreneurs sift through, what are there, 3 or 4 thousand different franchise concepts?
There are many franchise concepts out there, but with my group, I have over 800 plus companies that span over 37 industries, from food to well health and wellness to AC services. So it just depends on what people are looking for. In my strategy, I go from that 800 plus companies, go down to 8 that I present to my candidate after knowing them, their lifestyle they're looking for, their goals for their income they're looking for, their criteria, their passions, and their budget. And from that, we narrow down to 8, and then we talk to 4 franchise or brand, and the goal is to get to that one business that works for them.
Great. That's a great description of how you create value for the people that you connect with. So I'm not going to say more traditional, but as a business broker, my focus is on working with business owners who have owned their business for some amount of time and are looking to exit. And so I don't do much with brand new businesses. We work almost exclusively with existing businesses. Our businesses, the common characteristics are that they've been in business for a while. They've created some sort of awareness in the marketplace, and most importantly, or as importantly, they have profits. They're generating their business is cash flowing. So in some ways, it takes a little bit of the risk out of entrepreneurship. Now, the flip side of what I do versus what Dr. Ann does is that oftentimes when you're buying an existing business, your upfront investment is going to be a little bit more because you're buying a business that has a history. Well, we know where it's been, that sort of thing. So oftentimes the upfront investment is going to be a little bit more. So what I share with people who approach me and maybe are trying to make a decision between the two, they've got to balance the risk and the reward. Are they willing to pay a little bit more for a little bit certainty as it relates to cash flow, or they want to try something a little bit more entrepreneurial, working with Dr. Ann on a newer, brand new business concept that also has a proven success model because it's in the context of a franchise. Did I capture that pretty well for you, Dr. Ann?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, franchise ownership and franchise business is really a business model where you purchase the rights to operate the business using an established brand, the proven system, and support from the franchisor. So, it really allows you to own a business for yourself, but never by yourself because of the support. And business ownership can be really hard days, right? So, being able to have a community, a support system to keep pushing you forward, that's important. Austin, you mentioned about the cost, because that's one of the questions people ask me. How much does it cost to start a franchise, to get into franchise? And the word is, it depends.
My favorite answer.
It depends, because startup may vary depending on what business you try to get in. It could start ranging at $20,000, $30,000, which I also have a portfolio business opportunity, to over $1 million, depending on the brand, the industry, the locations. But I would say many franchises are available on average, because that's a wide range, right? From 20,000 to 1 mil. On average, it's about 50,000 to 200,000. Like that's a sweet spot that can get a really good franchise for you. And then, of course, financial options is available. And I think we talked about this in our other presentation, is really being able to say, when it comes to funding, franchising or business acquisition makes it a little easier to get funding because they already have an established financials previously. So the lenders, just from our perspective, they want to lend money to someone who they can get money back with interest. That's what it comes down to lending as. So with franchise ownership and business acquisitions, there is track record that they can look at and say the chance, like embedding it, the chance of likelihood of the success will be higher than if you just start out from scratch and have nothing to prove.
Okay. So let me ask you a question, a clarification question. So you've mentioned this a couple of times. Business opportunity versus franchise. So what's the difference between those two concepts?
Yeah, that's a great question. So most of my portfolios are franchises. But I also, in my portfolio, I have several business opportunity, meaning they are business, but they're not franchise. So for example, vending machines. I have several companies I work with where they're not franchised. You purchase the vending machines and they help you, what I call the VIP service. They ship it to you. They find location for your business. They do all this training and just overall a VIP service, but they're not a franchise. You can buy and you have rights to all their machines. You have rights to everything, and there's not any ongoing fees that they would charge, as an example. I have another portfolio as considered as business opportunity is medical staffing. They, depend on which package you pick, they will teach and train you on how to get into staffing for medical professionals. There's no ongoing fees because it's almost like a consulting. They help you set up your business, and it's your business that you under your name and whatever else, and there's no ongoing fees. So that's the difference between franchise versus business opportunity in my portfolios.
Gotcha. Very, very good. I appreciate you sharing that. So let me ask you a question. What when and we know that in our business we got to take people where they are, and so there's I think we have a concept of who our ideal client would be, but then people just show up and they have more of this, more of that, so on and so forth. So when you talk about your ideal client, what does your ideal client look like?
Yes. So my ideal clients are individuals who are hungry and wanting to get into business for themselves and really building that wealth investment as a goal, right? So it could be corporate professionals, women executives, business owners who want to brand stack, buy another business that use the existing customer base. What boils down is someone who have at least, I'll say comfortably, at least $50,000 as an initial investment, because buying a franchise is similar to buying a house. You need a down payment because the lender wants to make sure that you have skin in the game so they can lend you 70 or 80% of the loan. And someone with great credit score. So these are my ideal avatars. I work with a lot of people, but these are ideal people that I know I can get them something fast, as well as that meet their goal. So at least $50,000, because that will give as a down payment, an initial investment, and then a credit score of at least 700, because you need a good credit score in order to get lending. If you don't have or not planning to get lending, then your credit score may not be as important. But I'll say with caveat that some franchise do also look at your credit score, because that also predict how successful you may get from a financial standpoint, or how you are, depending on what industry you're going to go into. Individuals that are willing to work within a framework of a franchise, because franchise, it works to scale because they have a playbook for you to follow, a framework for you to operationalize it, right? Make it work. So within, as an owner, you can put your twist or innovation in it, but in the end, you still need to make sure that you follow the system, the proven model, because they want to make sure that they pick a franchisee that will be able to follow the rules and then really build successful, because you're successful, their brand will continue to be successful. So that's why I'm gonna work with you to take you through this process, because you have to earn a franchise and be awarded, because they don't just hand out franchise to everybody. And if you go to a place and they give it to you to everybody, run, because that's not a good model, because they should be selecting the right candidate for their brand.
So I read an article a few years back, and the similar conversation, and these several franchisors said they liked people who come out of the military as potential franchisees, because those folks were really good at sort of executing the mission. Here's kind of the box that we're playing in. Here's what your success formula is. So we need you to execute. And they found that veterans had a little bit more expertise in that approach than maybe people who hadn't spent time in the military. Have you had any experience in that regards?
Absolutely, yes. So, the one of the common question, I guess, do I need prior business experience to get into franchise? And I tell people, not necessarily. And the reason why, because franchise provide comprehensive training, ongoing support. So prior industry experience is not required. But what they do require, to back to your question, is that for you to be able to follow this framework, follow the system they already put in place, and follow what they've asked you to do, because that's their success formula, right? If you're not able to do that, and you're like, no, I want to put the door here and not there, but so that's where I think they love veterans, because, and that's true. Actually, quite a number of franchisors that I work with, they do offer discounts for veterans, because that's an incentives for veterans to be a part of their brand. So most definitely, they also give discounts to like women minorities. They give discount to, so they do give discounts, and it depends on the brand. It could be 10%, could be 20%. It all varies, but for sure, veterans, they do get a good discount. And then, for people that say, do I need business experience? I tell, owning a franchise, the benefit, especially for a first-time owner, is that you are walking into a proven business model that works. You have that brand recognition, so you have that training and support, and you're going to have support for marketing and operational systems. Again, not all franchises are created equal, and that's where you have to work with someone like myself, a franchise business broker, to help you evaluate those choices, and then faster ramp up time, because you went in and you just scale, right? Or went in and start out and just scale. So instead of starting from scratch.
Great. That. I appreciate you sharing that. And so when I look at my business, and we have a wish list of what our ideal clients look like as well. Sometimes we get close, sometimes we don't.
Mm-hmm.
But when and let's just take it from the buyer's perspective, because it's slightly different on the seller side. But from a buyer's perspective, we're looking for, like yourself, we're looking for somebody who comes to the table and they have some cash to put into the business. We're fortunate in that we can have some relatively flexible financing options. The SBA is typically a very good partner for many of the deals that we do, in that they offer some very attractive financing for potential business owners. And then, of course, we have the option of what we call seller financing. So in a typical structure, a buyer will come to us. They'll have some amount of cash as down payment, 10 to 15%. They can finance maybe 60 to 85% with the SBA. And then maybe if depending on the SBA requirements or whoever the lender is, the owner can or the seller can offer to maybe carry 10, 15, 20% of the business, and what we call seller financing, and that gets the deal done. So we find that particularly attractive when, as we know, the financial markets can be all over the place. But when money gets a little bit tight, we can, and of course, based on the motivation of the seller, we can default to varying degrees of seller financing as ways to get the deal across the line. So that's we've got some flexibility there. And I do want to I want to squash a myth, because there's a lot of stuff going around the internet today that people can buy high quality positive cash flowing businesses for no money down and 100% seller financing. So we've been in the business for 40 years. We've as a company, we've closed over 15,000 transactions, and very, 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 very few, almost none deals fit that zero money down, 100% of financing. There's cost to the seller when they sell their business, and if they're taking a no money down financial terms, then there's probably something structurally wrong with the business, meaning that it's probably losing a lot of money, or they're in a situation where you as the buyer are going to have to assume a tremendous amount of liabilities to be able to get into that business for little or no money down. And so what that does is, as we were talking about earlier, that takes the risk component and increases it dramatically. So the lower your payment is, the greater the risk. Now, I've got a colleague who's he's bought and sold 60 businesses over the last 15, 20 years, and he's bought some with no money down. But he's an expert at this. It's not something I would recommend to a first or second time business buyer, business owner. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's just important. When something sounds so good, it may not be true. It seems like it just like zero money down, like, so you see like yard signs on the highway, like zero money down for your house, for next house. When something sounds so good, I would just proceed with cautionary. You don't know what the trail is leading you to.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah. So I would say when that happens and you're like, is this legit? Reach out to Austin or myself, depending on what you're purchasing, because we can sniff out some red flags very quickly, because we're in this industry long enough that we understand what does it really takes to get this business up and running, and we can provide you the right directions.
Exactly.
And that's the goal. Like I see both of us as we're in the people business and the education business, right? It takes a lot of effort and in terms of like understanding what does that take for you to get started in your business, but really educate what are the options you have. Does it make sense? Is it realistic? Do you need to save more money before you start? Because I have people come to me and I help them through and I say, hey, to be fully transparent, I'm going to help you, but you're not ready yet for business, because they're not in the business mindset yet, right? So it's not just about having the money to get into a business. You've got to have first the mental resilience and the mindset to be as a business owner. Especially for people, because I specialize in helping people that have a job and get into a business, a franchise business as an investment. You got to have that mindset, because when you work, you come in, you clock in, or you just work your whatever 9 to 5 and you leave and nothing, you're done. When you're a business owner, you do have to, because it's your business, you do have to do a little bit more than just the bare minimum. Because the bare minimum may not cut it when you have your own business. And then just also being able to do your due diligence. Does this business model, because I also specialize in helping people get into a semi-passive franchise options. And there are options out there that you can do a part-time involvement, 20 hours, especially home services, vending, or executive models. We can hire a manager to run that daily operations for you, but you have to do the due diligence to build a business up. You have to make sure that you are kind of like trust but validate, right? Trust but verify. You got to put in the work and the sweat equity in order to make sure your business up and running well. And then maybe eventually you can buy yourself out of your job and run your business full-time and scale. So yes, there are semi-passive franchise options out there. They're options, but you just have to do your due diligence and make sure that's the right strategy for you. And that's something that I help with.
Okay, great. So let me talk a little bit about sort of the difference between our two practices, because when with what I do, I don't have 800 different industries or 800 different opportunities that I can present to somebody who's looking for an opportunity. So in my business, we're typically working off of an inventory of businesses that sellers we've approached a business seller, and they said, hey, Austin and your friends, I'd like you to represent me. So we're one of the more productive locations within our network. But even in best case, we're going to have about 200 different opportunities that somebody can select from. Then with those 200 opportunities, they may go, in terms of sales price, they may go from $50,000 or $60,000 all the way up to several $1,000,000 in terms of price. And so if you come to me and say, hey, I'd like to have a business where I do ABC, I may not have that for you, because either we sold a business like that 2, 3, 4 years ago, or we've never seen that one come to market. We're unlike in your business. You've got, again, all of these different franchise concepts that you are representing. So somebody's probably more likely, if they're, as we talked about before, if they're passionate about a particular industry or type of business, you'll probably have a better opportunity to finding something for them sooner, because you're representing more a larger variety of businesses. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, Austin, I think that's definitely it. Yeah, so I do have access to over 800 plus, and I use the word plus because even if they're not in my portfolio and you come and say, and I really like this XYZ brand, I can reach out to that XYZ brand and get a contract with them and work with them. And the reason that why that's important, because if you go to them, they're still going to charge you the same amount of money and you don't have an expert guidance like myself. Versus I reach out to them once the deal is closed, then they reward me for helping you through the journey successfully. That's the only difference. And your cost stays the same. Just like you're buying a house with a real estate agent, your cost stays the same. It doesn't add more. So I use that as an analogy because people are like, okay, so what's the catch? Why is it free working with me? As I get paid through commissions with the marketing budget that the seller have. Just like buying a house, the seller of the house pays for the agent. So really being able to guide you through that process.
Right.
And make sure that you're well informed and you know what you're doing and you avoid the landmines in the franchise industry. And
Right.
yeah, 800 plus companies, over 37 industries. So I think for us and for me, my biggest portfolio is mainly giving you franchise as a new business with the brand support and systems. We do have some franchise resales, but those are more specific in certain areas that the franchisee decide to sell because they're done with the business, they're ready to retire, things of that nature. But the majority of my portfolio are more new business of franchises.
Right.
And that's where we partner, even though we have business broker in our title, we partner up to do webinar like this, and even in our candidate sharing, because just like what Austin just said, he may not have something for you. He might bring it over, be like, and is this something can help with? Or vice versa. I have individuals who may not, in the end, decide, you know what, I want this, but the franchise territory is not available. Is there something else? And I would punt it over to Austin and he'd say, hey, do you have a business similar? This is what my candidate is looking for. So our goal is to help you and, do what's best for you and finding out options that works with you.
Exactly. Yeah, and if there's any place where we sort of are direct competitors, it would be in that reselling of the franchise of existing franchises, because we do get a fair amount of interest from people who have bought a franchise, and like you said, either they want to retire, or maybe they've got some health issues in the family and they want to exit, so they'll come talk to us about reselling their franchise. So I want to just kind of take a quick right turn here and kind of talk about what, as a potential buyer of an existing business, what are some of the things that maybe you should be looking at, or as you evaluate an opportunity, what you should be looking at. And so there's probably 30, 40 things, but I'll tell you I'll share with you the top, I think of the top 3 that you want to get your arms around with to make sure that this is the right kind of opportunity. So obviously, first thing is you got to be comfortable with what the underlying business is. Now, sometimes people say, well, I'm not so much concerned with that, but what I really want is a business that is that's run well, it's operating well. That's my biggest concern, and then I can learn the business, and that's absolutely probably most of our clients or probably potential buyers. That's the approach that they take. They're sort of industry agnostic. They just want to make sure that it's got good bones and there's good fundamentals. And so what are those? What does that good skeleton look like? So number one is if you're a seller, you've got to be able to create a business that sort of runs itself, because most of the a lot of the buyers that we see, they're not looking for a job. They are looking for an investment opportunity, because oftentimes they have multiple businesses, and the discussions they're having with me is that to add another opportunity into their existing portfolio. So they don't want to give up what they have to go find an opportunity where they've got to spend 80 hours a week in there to make it successful. They want something that has a light touch. They can put in 4 or 5 hours a week. And I'm comfortable representing them because they've already proven that they can manage multiple businesses. So the thing that we share with sellers is um, work on, and you mentioned this earlier, Dr. Ann, work on building out your leadership team so that they can ostensibly run the business in your absence. That's going to make the business far more attractive. The other thing, and we can go into more detail on this if need be, is have clean books and records. So what does that mean? So we know we're not from the IRS, right, Dr. Mann?
No,
We're not from the
we don't
IRS.
want to be.
But business owners have a tendency to include personal expenses in their run it through their business so they can get a savings on taxes. So their goal is to create as much taxable, probably minimize taxable income. And I get it, and I understand that, but that works against the seller as they endeavor to achieve maximum price for their business. Because, and of course, we can go back and we can make some adjustments and some other things like that. But boy, what kind of story does it tell about your business if if it looks like it's broken even for the last 2, 3, 4 years, but then you've got the secret spreadsheet that shows what the business really made if we added back all of those personal expenses and that sort of thing. So endeavor to maintain clean books and records. And I think the third thing that is probably really important is to make sure that as a seller and of course a buyer, what we call a concentration. We want to make sure that the business, that 95% of the revenue for the business is coming from one customer or two customers, because obviously if there's a transition, businesses are built on relationships. That if there's a transition and then now there's the seller's gone away and now we have the new buyer there may not be the same sort of connection that customer has with the new buyer, and so that it puts that relationship at risk. So you bought this business, it's doing really really well, but now your top customer that's responsible for 50% of the business, they go away. Now you got to ask yourself, what have I bought? Now, there's some ways to protect yourself on that. There's a variety of ways that we could get into in a more of a one-on-one conversation. But if you see that going in, as we talked about, as you're doing your due diligence and you see that situation, that's cause to step back and identify that as a red flag and really get some additional information about that. So, in your business, Doctor, and we just kind of ended here with red flags. What are some of the top red flags that you see with either on the franchisor side or the franchisee side that you sort of try to educate your clients around?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to answer that question. But actually, I want to piggyback on your other questions regarding what to look for, when buying a franchise business, because it's going to transition well to the red flags. So similar, when you buy a franchise, there are some key factors you have to look for as well. The first thing is brand reputation. So is the franchise well regarded by customers and franchisees? And that means trust, right? And trust in business means so much. And that's why you get into a franchise is the brand. And how we evaluate it is just literally by calling the franchisee owners, and you're going to get through that and the due diligence process that can guide you through. And the franchisee support, what kind of training, tools, ongoing support does the franchisor provide? Are there communities that they allow, the different franchisees come together and help each other? What is the financial performance look like? So in the franchise world, we have what we call the FDD, which is the financial franchise disclosure document. And in that franchise disclosure document, there's an item 19, which tells you the financial performance data. And that's the only thing from a financial standpoint they can claim, because those are public information. They cannot say anything else because legally they're bound to just sharing what's on the item 19. Similarly for me, I cannot go out and say anything that is different from what item 19 says. So
Now, item 19, is that that financial disclosure, is that for an average of all of the operators, or is that for the overall system performance?
So both. So the item 19 depends on how they put it together.
Mm-hmm.
But some brand will do for entire system. They break it down by the top 25% got this, the top 50% does this, or the lower quartile. Some would actually break it down by like individual operator, individual franchise owner, and there's what they make. So it just all depends on how the franchisor decides to put their numbers together.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's really important to take a look at that, because anything outside of that, they cannot financially share or say. And then investment and ROI. So what does the required investment? Does that match your budget and financial goals? So that's why when you come in, it's important to know what does that investment looks like. And then what is the market demand? Is there a huge market demand for this? Because if there's demand, that means there would be business. And that means there are people interested in the product or service that you're looking at. So for example, if you're going for an AC company, there will always be a demand because those are what I call essential service, right? People are still going to need their AC running or their heating or their plumbing being fixed. People may not need a gym membership. It's essential potentially, but people that if a recession comes and one thing they need to cut off, maybe a gym membership. But it just really depends on what that looks like or other trendy things that you may have to consider. Scalability. Can you grow this into multiple units? Because like I said before, people get into business not just to have a business, right? You get into it because you have grander goals of more flexibility of your family, more time to travel, more things to do this, more things to do that. So really, are you able to grow and scale multiple location and units if you choose to allow you to build a team and remove yourself from that? You're not buying a job. Your goal is to buy a business to be able to run it without you. And just like what Austin said. And lastly, just the satisfaction, the franchisee satisfactions. Ask to speak with existing franchisees about their experience. Would they do this again? Because when you sign a contract, it's usually a 10-year term that you're are doing operating this business. So talking to the franchisees directly is important. So to answer Austin questions, what are some red flags that when it comes to buying franchise? Because again, not all franchises are created equal. There are definitely better ones out there than others, depending on how they're operating the business. I think one of the major red flags that I would look out for is a franchisee who doesn't really vet their candidate or vet the people they're going to let into their system, because that just tells me that they're not being selective who they choose, because their brand is built on the success of the franchisees and they're not selective. Then you should be asking, why are they not selective? Why are they not asking all these questions? Why are they not going through this vetting process? Because they should. And if they don't, that means either they just want you in there, but do they provide the support? So kind of going through like, what kind of support would they do? Is it just initial or what's the ongoing support? Another red flag is when you talk to current owners and they're like, I don't like my experience. It's not something that I enjoy. They didn't give me this XYZ. So talking to the existing owner and know their satisfaction and that their low satisfaction, that may also be a flag. I'm trying to think what other things. And then, of course, any litigations. If a franchisor have lots of pending litigations against them, that will also be a red flag. Like, for example, if they are on the gin of bankruptcy or franchisees sue them for XYZ. Some of that stuff you will not know unless you work with someone like myself, because I have inside knowledge and can kind of walk you through that. And also, just with working with a franchise attorney, they can look up the agreements to pick out some of those red flags. So I would say those are the major red flags that I see when it comes to franchise business.
It's a great point because I've, as I mentioned, I have a little experience in working with franchise resales, and you're absolutely right. They are all over the board. I've talked to some, and some say that their franchisor provides either little or no support uh, aimed at helping them be more successful in their territory. And I've talked to a couple where they're just absolutely over the top in love with their franchisor because they've provided them, weekly, monthly coaching, make all sorts of other things available to ensure their success, and that sort of thing. So you've been mentioning it throughout our time today, is talking about the importance of due diligence and really understand what is it that you're investing in, because oftentimes people sometimes are so quick to make a decision to move forward, they sort of are blinded by the opportunity to to get into business, that they don't sort of engage in the fundamentals of hey, is this the right opportunity for me, that sort of thing. Yeah.
And then questions for both of us to answer, and I'll answer first, and Austin would love. How long does it take to open a franchise or open a business? That's one of the common questions. Like, how long would it, for me, the process typically takes roughly about 3 to 6 months from initial research to opening, but also with a caveat, it depends on you and your level of readiness and your funding. I think the funding is usually what gets people that delay the process. So I usually have people have that conversation really early on when they start evaluating, when they get to about what I said, like about 4 individuals that they want to, companies they want to work with. Because funding takes a while. It depends on how you do it. There's many funding options they can do, but it does take a while. And then if you're going to do a brick and mortar business where you have to find a space, you got to build out, or you do a non brick and mortar service business that can start at your house and buy and get in some vans and trucks or other things that you need or equipment that you need. So all that take into account, that will dictate how soon you're going to open your business.
Right, good. So if in my business, there's obviously there's the seller side and the buyer side. So this on the seller side, if you're trying to sell a business, we often quote that's going to take about 8.5 months to sell. When we track those numbers very, 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 very closely, because we've got a bundle package. We list the business, we package it from a marketing perspective, and then we create awareness through sharing with our various databases of individuals that we have. So that in a perfect, in an ideal or optimal situation, it's about 8.5 months. Now on the buyer side, it's a little bit different, right? So once they've identified an opportunity, from the time they've identified the opportunity and they've submitted an offer that's been accepted, it's probably about a 2 or 3 month process. And very similar to what you said, Dr. Ann, if there's a third party financing involved, they've got to go through the loan approval process, so on and so forth. It can go faster if it's a cash deal or there's owner financing, because if it's owner finance, there's not nearly the number of hurdles that you have to jump through. But some things that we do sort of mandate or request to ensure that there's no buyer's remorse, we'll sign the deal. The buyer will make an earnest money deposit on that transaction, and then we'll give them 2 weeks or maybe a little bit more to conduct due diligence, where they have the opportunity to go in and sort of validate all of the things that were mentioned during the sort of pre-agreement phase: revenue, um, market size, number of customers, and that sort of thing, So we give the buyer the opportunity to go in there and validate all that. So after that's done, then it moves to the the, uh, the validation process of the legal terms. We make sure that there's no liens against the business, and that there's no outstanding liens, or that all taxes have been paid. Then of course the other negotiation piece, if it's a brick and mortar, working through the assignment of the lease to the new seller. So again, and in each one of those, uh, in a perfect world, you can get it done in 60 days. In a not so perfect world, it may take a little bit longer, because as we say in my business, there's two things that kills deals on my side. It's lawyers and landlords. So those can be the wild card. I've been fortunate. All the deals I've had. Well, in fact, I did have a landlord kill one of my deals, but for the most part, I have a decent relationships with landlords, and so it's not been a problem. So those are yeah. So again, it can move a little bit faster, but there are definitely some things that we have in place that cause us to move a little bit slower, because we endeavor to protect both sides of the transaction, both buyer and seller. In fact, when people work with Transworld, they're surprised that, not in every case, but for the most part, people don't need a buyer doesn't need to bring an attorney into the transaction, because the way that we structure our agreements is set in such a way, because we've had a number of years to work on them, but we structure our agreements, our buy-sell agreements, in such a way that it's fair to both sides, and that attorneys really aren't necessary. Oftentimes, people will have an attorney look over the documents, which we encourage, or don't discourage. But oftentimes, it's just a quick read, review, and attorneys will often say, "Yeah, everything looks great." Because I think we on both sides, that we know that sometimes, again, attorneys can kill the deal.
Yeah, and on our side with franchise, I always recommend individuals. I mean, they're spending 100, 200,000 on the deal. Spending one or two more grand on the franchise attorney is crucial to
Yes.
protect them, and picking out any red flags from the agreement that needs to make amendments. And sometimes, yeah, the franchisor would come and make the amendments as needed once picked up and by the franchise attorney. So, really, as the question I would say is like, for our answer, and then Austin, do I need to do due diligence before buying a business? And the answer is 1,000% yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes.
If you are not going to, due diligence is so critical to assess the health of the business. And I strive to be your one-stop shop by connecting you with different professionals, CPAs, attorneys, franchise lenders, to help you evaluate and protect your investment. And Austin would be similar, but you have to do due diligence, the research process, and work with individuals like myself and Austin, help you to work with, walking through the landmines and not step on it, and walk and get to your destination safely and sound, and really start doing what you want, which is starting your business.
Great point. We wholeheartedly support aggressive due diligence. Now, because of the way we run our business, we will not conduct due diligence on behalf of a buyer, because that just puts us in a difficult legal position in the event that something goes wrong. But we will guide and tell people, professionals that they can use. What we have a list of vetted attorneys that, if somebody needs legal assistance, we can refer them, or help valuing some of the assets that are being acquired, that sort of thing. We can help with those kinds of resources. But we almost insist on the buyer conducting due diligence, just because a couple of things. First of all, we want to make sure that they're comfortable with all of the assertions that have been made prior to them entering the agreement. And then secondarily, oftentimes through due diligence, people will say, "Wow, this is not really the type of business that I think where I could do my best work." And so, understanding that there could be some buyer's remorse, we'd rather that happen earlier rather than later. But our due diligence is, and I can't speak for all firms in the business brokerage agency, but when somebody goes to into due diligence with us, we allow them, the buyer, to back out at any time for any reason. So we sort of de-risk the process by saying, hey, look, if you just wake up one morning and said, boy, I'm not feeling this entrepreneur thing, and you've made major deposit, you're halfway through due diligence, you said it's not going to work, you'll get your money back. The problems occur is that once we clear due diligence, everybody says, hey, I'm good, both buyer and seller, and then as we proceed, then at the 11th hour, as we go to create closing documents, you say, I'm not feeling it, I want out. Now that's a different situation. Happens rarely, but it does happen. And so we find people may be in a position where they may have to forfeit some portion of their deposit because we've basically gone to the 11th and a half hour based on your assertions that you want to move forward. So due diligence is important to make sure that this is the deal that you want to move forward with. And so I want to just say one thing. I mean, you mentioned earlier, I'm going to comment on that. So you said most of your franchise agreements are 10 years. So obviously with what I do, there is no max or min time that you've got to stay with a particular opportunity. It's not uncommon. It doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen where somebody buys a business and they say, wow, this is not what I thought it was going to be, or my priorities have shifted, and so on and so forth. So now they can come back to us, and this happens a lot. We get a lot of resales. They can come back and say, hey, look, I know I've only been at this, 8 months, 6 months, 12 months, but I want to make a shift. So I'd like to put the business back on the market and sell it and then go find something else to do. So we see that a lot. So in that regard, you have a little more, a little bit more of flexibility than a traditional franchise arrangement.
Right. And it really depends on the company. Like say usually it's 10 years, but it also depends on the companies as
Yes.
well. It depends on not all of them are 10 years. So just on average. And that's why it's good to talk to a franchise attorney, look at that, because there are probably terms that you can get out of the business if XYZ did not fulfill their XYZ expectations. So there are
Correct.
clauses that you can get out of the business if they don't fulfill the expectations. So
Exactly.
we're gonna route out with two last questions, and I think these are two most common questions that folks will have as well. So how do we get paid? So I'll say as a franchise business broker, I get paid by helping you getting to a franchise that works best for you, and then through their marketing budget is what they pay me. So really is their marketing budget. So never by you. So you get really expert guidance with no added cost. If you go on Google and say, I'm going to go to them directly and you get the business, your price doesn't change. But what changes is that you got to go through this process, not knowing everything in this landscape and potentially hit some landmines or not getting some red flags that you don't even know. So really it's being able to work with me and guiding you through that process. Austin?
So I'd like to share with my sellers because the buyers invest nothing up front. I mean, so it's just kind of similar to a real estate transaction. So I think the most attractive things for sellers to work with us is that our interests are aligned. I get paid when the seller gets paid. So we operate on a contingent basis. The seller, 99.9% of the time, they pay our fee, and we do a lot of education of both the seller and the buyers upfront on a contingency basis with no guarantee that we will get paid. So we do packaging the business, creating the market materials, vetting the potential buyers. For our more popular listings, we'll get 200 or 300 inquiries as to a particular opportunity. So we're investing a lot of our time and our skill into identifying, vetting the buyers, so we can take that inquiry group of 300 people or 300 entities down to the top 10 or 15 most likely candidates that'll close the deal. So again, we get paid by the seller at the time of close on a contingent basis.
Beautiful. And then last question, and I will put up our contact information. Why should someone work with someone like us, a franchise business broker or regular business broker? I'll say is that I simplified the franchise business ownership for you with the process, saving the time and guiding you through the due diligence process that we've been extensively talked about, financing and discovery at all, no cost to you. So overall, I'm here to help you make a really smart, informed decision that aligns with your goals. To you, Austin.
Thank you so much. And so I share with my sellers, we take the complexity out of exiting or selling their business. If you think about it, so I'll just go back to what I just said earlier. If I'm running a business and I'm trying to sell at the same time, I don't know how you balance the two, because I would ask a seller, how are you going to manage 300 inquiries about the sale of your business and keep your business running? Because one of the biggest challenges that we see with businesses is that sometimes when they go to sell, their performance falls off. And when performance falls off, then a potential buyer is going to want some sort of reduction in price. So my pitch or presentation is, you do what you do best, and then let me do what I do best, and that's manage the process, manage all the complexities, the marketing, creating the awareness, getting it out onto the databases, and that sort of thing, so that you can finish strong, and more importantly, finish quickly, so that you can move on to the other chapter in your life. And then the other things, the intangibles that we bring to the table, 15,000 deals done over the last 40 years, and our deep bench of trusted advisors who can help facilitate anything that comes up in terms of a speed bump as they're working through the transaction. So as we keep saying, you're paying for the you're investing in the education that you and I, Dr. Ann, bring to the table to get deals done.
That is beautiful. Yeah. So I hope you're watching this and you really take away kind of our fireside chat, the pros, the cons, the benefits, the pitfalls. But really, what does it take to really work with individual like ourselves, who the goal is to help you to get into business and not starting from scratch, and being able to start off with successful business, just so you can really get to that greater goals, that more freedom, more flexibility, and the time with your family. So thank you so much. And I will put up our contact information here. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. We're here to help, and we're your partners. That's what it comes down to. We truly are your partners. So thank you so much. Until next time.
Dr. Yang, it was a great session. Thank you so much for collaborating with me. This is absolutely wonderful.
Thank you, Austin. Yes, I really loved hearing your story, and I think how we can complement each other really well.
Okay. Look forward to the next one.